welcome to another episode of Still Kicking with Billy Howard. It's April 2nd, Sunday. Oops. The picture's reversed, and so when I'm moving my head, I don't know which way I'm going. But it's April 2nd, it's Sunday, and we're doing it on Sunday because my pretty good producer named Pete is going to be on vacation and in an undisclosed locale. And so we're going to do it today, and it's Sunday, and usually at this time, it's 11:20 a.m. When we're recording this, and usually I'm at church right now, so we're kind of I'm playing hooky from church, and so since it's Sunday, I thought we'd do something different. You can see the settings a little different. These are my other bookshelves. You've seen the other ones from the other 8 episodes. Is that how many we've done, Pete? 8?
I think so.
And this is episode 9.
Yeah.
We're doing episode 9. Wow, we're almost into double digits. Well, anyway, this is the rest of my study. And instead of doing, the grim reality of American politics at this present time, I thought, we've had enough pain for the first 8 episodes, and we try to have a little more pleasure. And I thought, since it's Sunday, we should talk about marijuana. We've never talked about that, but you can see I have long hair, and I may, look like a marijuana smoker to you, and I have smoked marijuana before. In fact, the first time I ever smoked marijuana, I think I was about 13. And I smoked with some older boys who were about 15. So we were all way underage. And I don't think I really got high. And we got high in the woods a few neighborhoods over from where I lived. And after we smoked this joint, I had to walk home, of course. And once I got to Brownsboro Road, I started to hitchhike, and lo and behold, my father picks me up on his way home from work. But, this was so long ago. I mean, we're talking early 70s, or maybe even late 60s, but probably early 70s, and, nobody knew what it smelled like, not even me, after having just smoked it. But, so, Dad would have no clue, thank God, and I wasn't really high. Didn't really get high until, I think I was 14. And I was down in Ponte Vedra, Florida with my family, and I had some cousins that lived down in Florida. And, everybody in Florida practically does drugs, especially back then. And my cousin was my brother's age. He was older, but he had this friend who was really cool. He was this blonde surfer dude, and, and I'm gay, and I had a huge crush on him, I remember. And he was so nice to me, and he had this white Corvair convertible, and he took me out onto the golf course of their local country club and one evening and made me smoke 4 joints with him. And I got really high. They say it takes quite a bit to get high the first time. And we went to teen night at the Ponte Vedra Surf Club, and guess who was playing there? This garage band from Jacksonville called Leonard Skinner. Yep. I saw those dudes, and they were just skinny teenagers or 20-somethings. Anyway, that was really cool. I hardly remember what they played because his friend got me so high. But anyway, that's one story. I'm going to talk a little bit about pot politics and then tell you a little pot story, take you up to college. But anyway, when I was young, I really didn't get to smoke too much pot because I didn't have any money. And pot, I think the first bag we ever bought, I was about 15, and all of us kids got our money together, and we got what was called a lid, which was probably less than an ounce, but close to an ounce, and it cost $10. That's right. Now, I graduated from high school in 1975, so high school was pretty much the early 70s, and the early 70s was really the heyday of rock and roll, I think, and certainly the kind of hippie rock and roll that I love so much. It's often called classic rock now. And anyway, in those days, pot was incredibly cheap. When I was in college in 1975, that's when I started college, you could buy an ounce of pot for $20. Now, I think this will be a good index of how hard it's gotten for the working class. We're going to use pot just as an example because in 1975, you could buy an ounce of pot for $20, that's all. And $20 was a lot easier to make in 1975 because I think the average, what do they call it, semi-skilled wage in those days was close to $30. It wasn't quite $30, but it was close. Ford workers, GE workers, they were making $30 an hour. So you could make enough money in one day to buy a pound of pot. And today, most people don't make enough money in one day to buy 1 ounce, because an ounce, as far as I know, is about $250 or $300 an ounce, sometimes 4 or 5, because there's all this gourmet pot. And that fits into my theme that technology has ruined everything, because gourmet pot is just too strong. Who wants to have a sip of beer and be blasted after one sip? But that's how pot is these days. Well, so that gives you a little idea. Now, a lot of people don't like the subject of pot. They really are judgmental of pot smokers. And, I just took a 2-year vacation from pot. I just stopped for 2 years because my mom had died and a lot was going on. In fact, I stopped before my mom died because so much was going on. And I just needed to take a break. And it was a good thing. And I got to tell you, it was pretty easy. And the reason it was easy to take that break is that pot is not physically addictive. It's just not. I have done a lot of reading about it. And even George Will, the conservative columnist, says pot is not physically addictive. So, but especially Christians, and a lot of people in my church are kind of judgmental about pot too. And most of them drink, So it's okay to drink whiskey or beer or wine, but pot, no, can't do that. Even though I don't believe Jesus ever spoke on it. Jesus did speak about getting intoxicated on wine, and he just said, don't do it all the time. So, I wonder, would Jesus have smoked pot? Because, he drank wine with tax collectors and prostitutes, and he didn't judge them. And had they offered him pot, had there been that much contact with the East, would he have done it? I don't know. He was a convivial guy. I think he had a better sense of humor and a better sense of fun than maybe the Apostle Paul was able to relate to us, being a Pharisee. But I don't want to get deep into theology, but, Christ did say that we have to do 2 things. He said, I'm going to give you 2 commands, besides believing in him. He said, you have to love God with all your heart, and you have to love each other. And he begged us not to judge each other. He said it over and over and over again, especially at the Last Supper. And he also said, let them know you're mine by how much you love each other. And yet, like the Pharisees, we can't seem to stop judging each other. And we put up these barriers to Christ, as our preacher preached very recently. And, if you're gay, you can't go to heaven. If you're, an alcoholic, you can't go to heaven. If you're a pot smoker, or if you're a heroin addict, or anything else, or a narcotics addict, pill popper of any kind. And, Christ didn't say that. He didn't say you have to do this, this, and this. He just said you have to believe in me. And you have to love God, and you have to love each other. And I think he said we have to love each other as you love yourself. And we're not good at forgiving each other, and we're really not that good at forgiving ourselves. And sometimes I think until we can forgive ourselves, we can't forgive anybody else. And the reason I say that is that if you don't think you deserve to be forgiven, then you're not going to think I deserve to be forgiven, or my brother, or anybody else's brother. So it's really hard to love each other, and the only way to do that is to kind of drop the judgment. So when it comes to pot smoking, and I have been smoking a little bit recently because I've got so much going on, and I find it kind of loosens me up for a gig. And I had a really nice gig last night. It went really well. And so I think that, like Christ said, just don't do it all the time. And I find for my music, it's best if I don't smoke all week and then have a little bit before the gig, and I'm loosened up and my phrasing is much more creative. So people need to loosen up about pot, whether you're Christians or Muslims or atheists or Hindus, Buddhists. I don't want to leave anybody out. We're so judgmental about it. And, not only do I believe pot should be legal, and it is legal, I think, recreationally in 8 states or something now, and I think for medical reasons in 25. But not only should it be legal, but for some people it should be mandatory. I mean, some of these people need to loosen up. The whole press and Democratic Party could use a good pot party right now. And when we come back next week, we'll probably talk about this witch hunt, as the Republicans like to call it. And I think they're right. It's this witch hunt of technicalities. And I really think that the mainstream media is really working this conspiracy theory pretty well. They really do, I think, believe that somehow Donald Trump enlisted the whole Russian state to do his opposition research. I mean, that's pretty much what this conspiracy theory is trying to prove. But what they're going to try to do is get this General Flynn on some kind of technicality, and he better beware, and I hope he does get immunity. It does really stink of a witch hunt, but we'll talk about that next week. So hopefully the American people can loosen up, and maybe everybody ought to smoke a joint and just have a nice Sunday. Anyway, I was going to tell you a little story. When I was in college from 1975 to 1979. So high school was the early 70s. College was the late 70s. And I was in a fraternity, and they were called Sigma Nu. I think I can say that. And we had this U-shaped fraternity house, and the public rooms were downstairs, and all the dorm rooms or whatever they were upstairs, and each dorm room had 2 guys in it. And I would say that half of the fraternity smoked pot and half did not. And the half that did not were real rednecks, and they didn't approve, and they were very judgmental. And the half that did, most of them drank beer too, but they also smoked pot. And they were more hippie-ish or more cool in their way. At least that's how I perceived them. And it was funny, that rivalry. But pot was $20, and we used to do this thing. When you're in college, by the time I got into college, I had a little bit more money. I had a very small allowance. My dad wasn't like a lavish rich guy, but he did give me an allowance, and I had a meal ticket that I had to have or I would starve to death because the allowance was so small. But pot was only $20, so I could buy, 1 or 2 bags of pot every month on my allowance. And it was only $20, and it was pretty good. It wasn't as strong as it is today. You could be high and still talk to your parents on the phone. You can't do that today with modern pot. Oh, and I would say this about pot too, before I get into this story too far. And it's not a long story, but pot, from what I've read, has never killed anybody. So when it comes to recreational drugs, pot is the least harmful. It really is the least harmful. And they're trying to say that it caused schizophrenia, or that it triggers schizophrenia. But if that were true, there would have been a spike of schizophrenia in the 70s, and there wasn't. So that kind of belies that lie. And they've been lying about pot a lot. And, they've done, let's put it this way, they've done billions of dollars of research, medical research on pot, trying to find something bad to say about it. And they really haven't found anything. And pot hasn't killed anybody. Even this strong pot today hasn't killed anybody. And it is strong. But nobody's died from it. It's not like fentanyl or Cantanol or all these terrible things that people are cutting heroin with us. So you heroin users, be very careful. If you can, test it before you take it. Don't take fentanyl. So if you could smoke some pot, it could reduce the harm of all these narcotics. But, at $300 and $400 a bag, how can anybody afford it? And it's just crazy. We're pushing people into alcohol and heroin and pills because pot is just so incredibly expensive. But hopefully that's all changing. But anyway, in my fraternity, we used to do this thing. When you're in college is when you do stupid things. You're pretty clueless, as smart as you are. I mean, you're in college. But you don't have any experience, and you don't know how the world works. And so, you binge drink and you do all these things. And God knows our drinking fraternity brothers binge drank quite a bit. I could never do it because I could never hold my liquor. But anyway, we used to do this thing called a power bag. Some Sigma Nu fraternity brother would come home after buying a bag of pot, and he would just go out into the hallway in front of his room and yell, "Power bag!" And whoever heard it would rush to his room with a $5 bill. And the first 3 people that were let into his room could buy into the bag of pot. And what we would do is we would lock the door and we would crank up our stereos. Back in the 70s, we were all about stereos. It was your stereo and how many watts per channel it had. And we would crank those things up and we would start smoking that pot until it was gone. And that was the thing. You had to smoke the bag until it was gone. And we had bongs and we had joints and we had power hitters where you put the joint in this thing and it would blow pot smoke out into your face. It was called a power hitter. And we would just, and some of the guys would drink too, but I would just smoke, and we would just get so high and listen to Frank Zappa and listen to Steely Dan and all that stuff. And we were having so much fun. And of course, the people who didn't quite make it to the door in time would be pounding on the door saying, "Please let us in, please let us in. I'll give you $10. And we'd go, no, you can't come in. So it was really funny to see the mad dash to the power bag room. So that was as bad as it got for me, and we really did binge on it, and we're all pretty much okay and doing very well in the world. And, almost all the alcoholics, almost all the homeless people are alcoholics, a very large percentage of them. And alcohol is so destructive. And I have read before that the Partnership for a Drug-Free America, which used to focus on marijuana, it's one of the reasons kids don't know how dangerous narcotics are, because they kept vilifying marijuana. That group is funded mainly by distilleries and pharmaceutical companies. And the reason they funded the Partnership for a Drug-Free America, it was a corporate sponsorship, is that the bourbon makers in Kentucky or liquor makers anywhere in this world do not want to compete with marijuana because marijuana is not addictive like their product, and it will not ruin their lives and their relationships. And it's the same with the pharmaceuticals. They make money off the black market too, because they manufacture these things that somehow get on the black market. And they do not want to compete with medical marijuana because there are no terrible side effects. The only side effect is that your appetite increases and you feel euphoric. That's just terrible. So anyway, happy Sunday. I love you, and thank you for watching another episode. And we will be back a week from Tuesday, and we'll do a little more politics, and we might do some more stories because I've got a million of them. Anyway, live up, be free, and remember, I love you. See you next week. That is, if I'm still kicking. Oops, the theme music.